the first movie ever to be based on a board game. Throughout the history of cinema, inspiration has come from countless sources. Back in the early 1980s, I imagine studio executives rolled their eyes when someone pitched a movie based on the children's board game Clue. It's a game I've played more than I care to admit. After college, my roommates and I went through a Clue phase, and now my daughter loves to play Clue. The only version we have is Simpsons Clue, so all of the characters, weapons, and locations are based on The Simpsons. Now, for the uninitiated, the game of Clue requires players to solve a murder by determining who committed the crime, with what weapon, and in which location. It's a simple game to learn, offering some mild entertainment, but it doesn't exactly scream, "Turn me into a movie!" Yet somehow, it works really well as a film. It's not so much the story that makes it work, but rather the eccentric cast of characters and the actors who bring them to life. What's crazy to me is that most of this cast were household names in 1985, but now I bet most people under 35 wouldn't recognize any of them. Before I dive into the characters and weapons, here's a brief summary of the plot. A group of people is invited to a mansion on a rainy night. They've each received a letter instructing them to use an alias. All of the characters are somehow connected, though they don't know how. After dinner, someone is murdered, and everyone becomes a suspect. The rest of the movie follows the characters as they attempt to solve the crime. In the movie Clue, each character is based on someone from the game, but unlike the game, they all have unique personality traits. The film also includes a couple of extra characters, such as Tim Curry's butler Wadsworth and Mr. Body, played by Lee Ving. Eileen Brennan plays Mrs. Peacock, Madeline Kahn is Mrs. White, Christopher Lloyd is Professor Plum, Michael McKeon is Mr. Green, Martin Mull is Colonel Mustard, and Leslie Ann Warren is Miss Scarlet. Now, early in the film, each character is given a gift, which turns out to be one of the 6 murder weapons from the game: a revolver, a noose, a lead pipe, a candlestick, a wrench, and a dagger. While the point of the movie is to solve the crime, I found the journey far more satisfying than the actual ending, which is saying something based on how unique that ending is. Clue is funny, with very subtle humor that's easy to miss if you're not paying attention, but there's also some big slapsticky scenes as well. Each character brings their own style of comedy, and the cast works exceptionally well together. I would be surprised if the Knives Out murder mystery movies were not heavily inspired by this movie version of Clue. Now, a few random things about the cast. I kept thinking that Miss Scarlet was played by Susan Sarandon. The mansion setting and Tim Curry in the cast reminded me so much of the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Mrs. Peacock, for some reason, reminded me of Angela Lansbury. Now, Clue was released the same year as Back to the Future, and I was surprised at how different and how much younger Christopher Lloyd looks with dark hair. Reginald VelJohnson, aka Carl Winslow, has played a cop in Family Matters, Die Hard, and Ghostbusters. He could have easily played the cop in Clue as well. Martin Mull, who played Colonel Mustard, was quietly one of the most talented people of his generation. Besides his comedic acting chops, he also co-created the genre-bending mockumentary series Fernwood Tonight. He has a master's degree in fine art, was an accomplished painter, published several books, and before all that, he was the rhythm guitar player in Jimi Hendrix's band. Now, back to the movie Clue. The film has a fun gimmick. Just like how every game of Clue has a different killer, weapon, and location, the movie had 3 separate endings. When you went to see it in the theaters, you didn't know which ending you were going to see. Now, the home video release was edited to show all 3 of the endings back to back, and surprisingly, it holds up and works really well. Clue is just a delight. It's genuinely funny, holds up nearly 4 decades after its release, and features a great cast of characters, each bringing their own brand of humor. I'm surprised more people don't talk about this movie, as even today the multiple endings remains a unique and creative touch that has not been replicated. Mistaking the shower for a light switch. Board games based on movies based on board games. Checking for a pulse. Synchronized spoon usage. Colorful cast of characters.